Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Tex Cathedra. I hope everybody having a wonderful weekend. And I'm going to mess with my volume here. Sorry about that. Lori, welcome back. Great to see you. So, on the election of the 267th Bishop of Rome, His Holiness Pope Leo the 14th. So what was interesting is when the news broke, I was just finishing up a jury trial, and so whenever I'm in trial, I always have turn my phone completely off. I mean, the last thing you'd want to do is, if you're a defendant in a jury trial case, look over and your lawyer's playing on his phone, right? So anyway, I turned the phone on, and I heard white smoke, and it took a while before he came out onto the balcony, so no one really knew who he was yet. And then when they said his name, I still didn't know who he was. I had never heard of this individual. Margot, Jason is having some technical issues. He is working on that, and he is en route, so he should be here shortly. And I don't know, something about when I saw his face, I felt better. I don't know if that's such a weird thing to say, but I just I sort of I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic about this Pope. The more I learn about him and the more I read about him, the more encouragement, the more the better I feel. I watched his first mass in the Sistine Chapel with the Cardinals. It was the Novus Ordo Missae, to be sure, and I didn't expect anything different than that. But it was in Latin. It was chanted. There were Gregorian chants, sacred polyphonies. He had women do the readings. I think one did. There was a nun who did the first reading in English, and then a lay woman did the second reading, I believe, in Spanish. I don't know a lot about the Novus Ordo Missae, so you got to whatever it is, the thing that I guess it's a responsory. Hey, Jace, what's up, man?
What's up? Sorry about that.
That's okay. That was in. I think your mic is set to your video mic.
Oh, yeah. Let me fix that.
But the gospel was chanted in Latin, which I really liked. So I at least think that this guy is not hostile to sacred tradition or those who are attached to it. Yeah, I see Margot here, kind of the wait and see approach, and that's what everybody else is. I would like to invite maybe something different. Let's jump all in on the Pope, man. Let's jump in on Pope Leo the 14th. I think the days of picking which Pope we're going to follow and which ones we aren't, I'm hoping all that's done. You know what I mean, Jace?
No, I don't.
That's why I love you. That's why I have you on the show, man. And that's our show, folks. No, I mean, listen, we just wrapped up probably one of the weirdest papacies, I think, in the history of the church. Not to mention the fact that during the first, 7 years of the papacy, we had basically two popes, people sort of picking which one they were going to follow, which one they weren't. I like this guy. No, I like the other guy. People now have a wait and see approach when it comes to the pontiff. Why? You know what I mean? Wait and see what? See if you like him or not. I don't know. I don't know. I don't see any reason to not like him so far. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about him or anything. Obviously, I don't think a whole lot of people do. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, from the moment he was, he came out and he was elected. I haven't black pilled or anything yet on it. I haven't been doom and gloom. I just think, I don't know. I mean, I think charity and fairness requires me to, I mean, I know people are talking about he's done this and that in the past, but as history well shows us, people are a lot of times different once they're elected to certain positions because a lot of people play the game to a certain extent.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially a position like this, right?
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see what he does. I mean, if he ends up going forward and good or bad, I mean, we'll just take it as it comes. And
I mean, I've been listening to what he's been saying so far, and he's been saying AI is a problem, which I believe it is, and I'm glad. See, I don't know. To me, the Catholic Church feels more like the Catholic Church again right now, and I can't exactly say. I can't exactly put my finger on why that is, but I mean, AI is a problem. And you know you know what no one cares about anymore? The Second Vatican Council, because that happened in the 1960s, and like we're beyond that now. I wonder if this Pope might just bring us to discussions about more pressing issues other than just what was going on in 1963.
Well,
And now
they
AI
did
and things like that. You know,
they did come out with a document on social media back in the 60s.
they did. Oh,
Yeah,
you
you're the
mean
one that told me, but yeah, or
well,
not
it's
social media, about media in
yeah, that's
general.
exactly
Sorry,
the
yeah.
point. Yeah, media. What is it called? Oh yeah, Catholic engagement with social integration, and I believe I don't remember the name of the document. It's from Vatican II, but yeah, it doesn't talk at all about social media, which is weird. This is the Catholic Church's definitive communication to the modern world on social communication, and the word internet literally does not appear in that document. I mean, why
Well, they
would it?
could.
It was written in 1963. You know what I mean?
Yeah, nobody could have imagined social media or the internet like it is today. I mean, it's just impossible.
That's often my beef when people think that the Catholic Church needs to be like this non-governmental organization or this neoliberal think tank, and I'm like, guys, it's really not set up to respond very well to situations. It doesn't get around. Like, I think if you consider Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses in 1516, and the Council of Trent wasn't even convened until like 50 years after that, and by then all the damage was done. And I'm like, you're going to be pretty disappointed in the Catholic Church if you really think it's going to solve global hunger. You're going to
well,
not the institution for that. I'm sorry.
Well, to Tyler's point here about, some focus only on the good and some only on the questionable. Yes, a balanced approach I think is required, but I think for me at least, it seems like you can already tell people that were already in a certain camp are going to set themselves up to remain in that camp no matter what, and people in the other camp are doing the same thing. It doesn't feel like a lot of the louder voices in the Catholic sphere are really taking a balanced approach. They're already setting themselves up to be right no matter what. And if their content is usually negative, they're setting themselves up for the negative. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard and seen, well, if he comes out and rescinds Traditionis Custodes or allows the Latin Mass, he's just gonna take all those people and give them a bump.
It's a ruse
He
to
does
something
all
else.
this other
Yeah.
climate change or yeah. And it's just like, dude, can we just for once in our life have a balanced, fair approach? Because if you think about it, it's if you take like just shootings in the US between police and black people, right? You've always got the group that says the police is always wrong. You've always got the group that says the victim, the black guy, was always wrong. There's never like, let me view each instance fairly and look at it from a non-biased perspective. There's always this bias, and it seems like that permeates every facet of our life. And I do know that some people, I guess, their views or clicks, their income, their revenue really relies on that type of that content. But if it ends up being where it's just a Francis too, okay, well then have that content or whatever, but at least give the man a fair shake,
So I don't think it's going to be Francis Part 2. I think it's going to be. So let me just share with you some things I see that are encouraging. Number one, he's a big fan, obviously, of Leo the 13th. By the way, I believe that you're going to see a canonization of Pope Leo the 13th during this pontificate. So look out for that. I'm saying it right here. So screenshot this for the receipts.
Somebody,
What's up?
I think it was Trevor was saying on Twitter the other day that there's not even a cult around him. There's not even like his case hasn't even been.
Yeah.
Like there's not groups advocating for him.
One of the things that I think has caused people some concern is his advocacy for social justice issues. And when we hear that word, we immediately sort of, okay, here we go. Here comes the Marxism, So I don't, but authentic Catholic social teaching is rooted in the Gospels, right? And if you really want to go to Catholic social justice teaching, you want to start with Rerum Novarum, written by His Holiness Pope Leo XIII. This guy has taken Leo XIV as his regnal name. He has spoken often about how Rerum Novarum is sort of the guiding principle of how he looks at Catholic social justice teaching. The church actually does have something to say about how society should conduct itself.
Yeah.
On earth as it is in heaven. We ask for God's will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. It is not the case that, and that's why we get so kind of irritated when we hear people like Joe Biden say, oh, well, I understand my religion says to be pro-life, but I can't force my religion on society. And we go, okay, well, no, that's not authentic Catholic teaching. We actually do have expectations of society, but there's a correct and authentic Catholic social justice teaching, and then there is a false social justice teaching that I would contend is written about in the Gospels. You'll hear all these people talking about we have to take care of the poor, always the poor. Francis talked about the poor, always the poor, the poor, the poor, and the poor, and the poor. Go back and read in, I believe it was Matthew's Gospel, where the woman who bought the expensive perfume to anoint our Lord's feet with, and Judas gets really annoyed and he says, "Oh, we could have sold that money and given it to the poor." And it tells you in the very next line, but he didn't say that because he really cared a rat's about the poor. He just liked to steal money out of the thing. There's a lot of that going on too. So I would be excited to see an authentic discussion of Catholic social justice teaching rooted in the gospel, anchored in the church's documents like Rerum Novarum and her subsequent works that are based on that. And I'd like to get away from this sort of Marxist gobbledygook talk of, but what about the poor man? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I know something that a lot of people, and I'm speaking mainly towards myself, struggle with this idea. I feel like modern politics has really skewed our idea of Catholic social teaching, especially right wing. There are certain aspects of it where people, at least here in America, they, if like the Pope or a bishop or somebody says something that's contrary to the political thought, say, of the American right, they're all of a sudden labeled a Marxist and a socialist and whatnot. And that may not necessarily be the case, because the Catholic social teaching doesn't necessarily line up with the American right. And I don't think people, or myself included many times, are making that distinction. Now I'm aware of that, so I try to be better about it, but I don't think we need to jump the gun so quick all the time to be like, well, he's a Marxist now because he said this, or he's a Marxist because that goes against this, Republican platform, or whatever the case may be. So I really think some discernment really has to go into effect before we really start throwing around that Marxist type language.
Yeah, no, I know, but I mean, you have to admit there's a lot of like modernist elements and so bishops and cardinals, and dare I even argue our last pope, who seemed to use the poor almost as a way of getting out of answering bigger questions sometimes. And sometimes when you see that, you just go, okay, so this really isn't about poor people necessarily, it's about something else. And
I do have a question for you. Is modernism in the room with you right now?
It's always in the room with us, Jason. It's everywhere. It could be your neighbors, and it could be.
And I agree with you to a certain extent. That's not what I said. doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't Marxist elements within the church of certain people, and that modernism doesn't exist. Those things definitely do exist, and they're definitely something that the church is battling. But I really think that the distinctions have to be made, in these cases.
And just like that, it's now my show again. I don't care about distinctions.
Well, you know
There'll
what?
be no nuance on this show.
You know what? I graduated from the Gregorian. Okay, so
Okay, that's it. Text communicated, and that's it. That's done. Jason is officially text communicated. It's anathema seat. No, I'm pretty encouraged. I like his approach. So far I enjoy the way, I can tell by the way that he celebrated his mass in the Sistine Chapel that he at least takes his liturgy seriously.
At a minimum, at least he's not downplaying the office in the sense that he's acting and dressing
100%.
like a pope. At least he's not like down dressing the office.
Nobody likes to see, I know people think that makes them look humble and
I think it's false humility, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and to me, what it demonstrates is you have disdain for this institution.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which makes me wonder, if you didn't want to be the Pope, why did you accept the nomination in the Sistine Chapel you know what I'm saying? I often ask myself this question. I want to be the Pope, but I don't like wearing cassocks. I don't enjoy all the pomp. I want to be able to say whatever I want and have people not take it too seriously. And okay, well, it sounds like, you know what I'm saying? The world needs plenty of bartenders. There's all kinds of other jobs you can do in the world. I don't know. If you're going to be the Pope, be the Pope. And when you do things like not live in I actually don't like that they gave away the tiara. Nobody asked me, and that's fine. But
this is going to kind of sound weird, but I think it goes along those lines too. I don't know if it's been confirmed or not, but I had read just a headline that said that he was going to move back to the what are they called, the papal apartments. Yeah. So I was like, well, that's good, and Pope Francis, you would see videos of him many times where people would try to kiss his ring or whatever, and he didn't want them to do it for whatever reason. Like, in one sense, I get what he was trying to do and convey in those instances, but I don't think that it was prudent. I don't think that, again, I don't think he should have downplayed the significance of his role on this earth,
Well, if you don't want to call yourself the vicar of Christ, you don't want to live in the papal apartments, you don't want people kissing your ring, you don't want to wear the papal tiara, then don't get mad when half the Catholic Church doesn't think you're the Pope. You have to pick a lane here. Pick a lane. If you want people to think you're the Pope, then you have to act like you're the Pope. And if you the more you act like, no, there's nothing special about me, I'm just like everybody else, and I disdain all these other trappings too. And eventually people are going to start getting these crazy theories that, well, maybe you're not the Pope. I don't know.
Well, I just think it really skews the distinctions of the difference between a lay person and clergy, and in this instance, the vicar of Christ, the
successor to Saint Peter himself.
Peter. Yeah. So it's just nice seeing these differences with Pope Leo XIV. I think that, I know it's basically, in many ways people will say it's aesthetics, but I think it's more than that. I think it sends a message to the faithful that, okay, he is taking this office to trying to bring it back to the level of okay, well, it's not just what am I trying to say? Because I don't want to say anything negative towards Pope Francis. How should I word it?
Yeah, be very careful, Jason. You've already been text communicated once tonight.
Yeah,
I don't want to have to do it to you again.
Yeah, I'm just not going to try to say, because I'll probably screw it up, and I don't want to come off wrong. But I just appreciate the way Pope Leo XIV is really seems to bring back these elements of the papacy.
An American Pope. I never in my entire life thought that that was even something that was possible. I didn't think something like that would ever happen in the history of the Catholic Church, much less my lifetime. That's and I was thinking about, so you know how there is this one of the reasons that many Jews will claim Jesus is not the Messiah is they were expecting the Messiah to conquer the Romans, right? You've heard this objection, right?
Yeah.
And I've thought to myself, well, he did. I mean, I that's a so within 300 years of the Roman Empire crucifying this man, all of their gods were thrown out, and worship of him was the official religion of the empire. That's, if that's not conquering, I don't know what is. And I was thinking about in our situation with this Pope, the Puritans came to the Puritans established the Massachusetts Bay Colony and what would eventually become the United States of America because, in their opinion, the church in England was too Roman. It was too popish, it was too Roman and beyond repair, and we have to separate entirely and establish, and purify. This was the Puritans' sort of motto, the English church.
Yeah.
And I just thought, those poor people, they crossed that whole ocean just to build a nation that would produce a pope of the Catholic Church one day. And I thought, Christ conquers. And I see it in so many instances. Speaking of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, Lori, speaking of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, a place that Catholics were not even permitted to travel through during, the 1600s when the colony was established. I believe Catholics were not admitted to attend Harvard University until like the late 1890s. And it's the largest archdiocese in the country now. They have more Catholics in Boston than they do in almost any other diocese.
I thought the Archdiocese of Galveston Houston was the largest.
Shut up, Jason. Nobody, that's the third time I didn't have to.
You know what though? I will say that the one thing that I do kind of hold it. Well, not do. I really do hold against Pope Leo the 14th, and I'm not a big fan of, is that he has some of his family is from Louisiana, so he has Louisiana blood. I'm not crazy about that.
I'm also not a big fan of this White Sox nonsense. Everybody knows that the Cubs are Chicago baseball team.
No, I hate the Cubs even more than the White Sox. Just so you know.
That's it. We're getting a divorce. That's it.
How can you be an Astros fan and like the Cubs in any form or fashion?
I mean, I guess I was an Astros fan.
You have to be. You have to be, or this will be done. Well, I guess the White Sox did beat us in the World Series, though. So there's that.
That was terrible. Yeah. No, I see a lot of positive things here. I think the air just feels a little lighter to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? I went to Walsingham. Did you go to Walsingham today, or did you go to?
Yeah, we went to 9:30.
Okay.
When did you go?
5:30. Vigil mass. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
I've gone full. I've gone full heresy.
Yeah, well,
I know, right? Does that even count?
Yeah, no, it doesn't count. You got to go twice now today. You better hurry
and wear a hair shirt. Let's see, what else did I knew there was something else about this that I want to talk about.
What?
Oh yeah.
I see Margot in the comments here, and she's talking about her fiance is a Cubs fan and whatnot.
Oh, very cool.
You know what? You know what? Margot has screamed Catholic so much that she has literally pushed a Chicago American into the White House, or to the White House,
American
to the papacy. Yeah. Chicago American.
Well done, Margot. I was thinking about this whole thing, and I always get sort of emotional like this whenever there's a conclave, because it always strikes me that we feel that we have to do all this defense of the Catholic Church, that people just don't know the Catholic Church is Jesus Christ's true church until we tell them that. And then, but I was sitting there watching this and watching the world wait with bated breath to find out who this Pope was. And I was thinking, there's a Methodist church down the road. I have no idea who their pastor is and have
Don't even care.
absolutely no idea how he was selected or if he was, and no one else cares either. Like, but I got about 15 texts from Methodist friends of mine, like, hey, can you believe who they chose the Pope? And hey, what do you know about this guy? And all of a sudden, yeah, they're interested in that Bishop of Rome seat and who gets it. And who, I don't think anybody cares who, I mean, and it's just one of those things that struck me, like the world knows who
Yes,
Jesus
you
Christ's church
It will
is.
solely be Margot's fault.
That's right.
No, you're right. Everybody across all religions were very interested in who comes out of that conclave.
And I just thought it made me reflect on the 2,000-year history of the Catholic Church and how it will outlive us and all of the things that. I'm going to be honest with you. There was a time there,
I hope so.
I appreciate it. Just after Traditionis Custodes, where I was like, women priests are coming, and I don't know how that's not going to happen at this point. Like, I don't know how it's not going to happen.
How what's not going to happen?
Women priests or something, something that would break the church's sacramental understanding of itself. I was like, there's a crisis coming and I have no idea what's going to happen. And then none of that happened. Yeah. And it just goes to show me that that Christ's plan for the church is bigger than my very minuscule understanding of what's happening in it. I looked at this cardinal that nobody really knew that the church chose, and it invited me to reflect a lot on how I had been viewing the Catholic Church in the last 2 or 3 years. And so I think that maybe one of the problems that the cardinals thought was a problem was the factionalism in the church. And of everybody thinking, the problem with the Catholic Church is it needs me to come in here and put my vision of what it should be on here. And so that I can use it for a particular culture warrior goal or something like that. I think the Jesuits do a lot of that. I think we do a lot of that. I know I've done a lot of that, and hopefully that will stop. And I'm going to try to stop it from my end too. The Catholic Church is not a cultural tool for me to use to push an agenda of any kind. And so hopefully we will get away from that and get more into, what Christ wants for the church. And that's really what's way more important. So, I looked back at some of the episodes that we did in the latter years of Francis's papacy. I didn't really love them because they were kind of complaining sessions and things like that, but I would like to do more content of what I always wanted this show to be. And so hopefully we're getting ready, Jason. Should we announce it now? We're going to kick off.
Well, okay.
Oh, I just got set down.
Before,
okay.
No, hang on. Before you break this news, be careful because Fiducia Supplicans has not been rescinded yet. It is still in effect.
I will be very careful. I'll be careful. It is still in effect. What we're going to do is we're going to do a show. I'm going to try to do this every week, but I think it may be once every other week to start. And we're going to go through the Nicene Creed article by article. I don't really know. So I'm looking forward to finding out.
We'll find out.
The Nicene Creed struck me as this really beautiful statement of faith. And there's so much trapped into that beautiful statement that I think we could unpack and have some really nice discussions on. And hopefully I think I just wanted to say that it was really refreshing to find out that there were enough good cardinals left in the Catholic Church to not continue down certain paths that it's appeared they were going down. So that was very refreshing to see. And it's just given me a little bit of a boost and a shot in the arm. And I'm just feeling a lot better lately. So,
well, let me ask you this. Out of all the things like major that you would consider major announcements, changes, or whatever the case may be, what would be the top of your list you'd like to see Pope Leo the 14th realistically do? Like,
wow, that's it. That, you know what? I don't even want to go there, because then again, that's me playing Pope,
oh,
and I don't know.
I was just kind of curious. Like I said, realistically,
I see what you're saying. Okay, so we're just playing.
Yeah. We're not
playing
asking.
a game. Okay.
Yeah. We're not asking like necessarily like, oh, well, I want him to, abolish the Novus Ordo tomorrow.
Oh, right,
and do that.
right.
Like I'm talking about just something realistically that you're like, dude, that would really give me a shot, another shot.
At least some type of quiet or not quiet reversal of Traditionis Custodes would be nice. He may choose to not do that and just leave it alone, as it appears to not have been very successfully implemented anyway in most cases. So maybe his thinking on that is just sometimes. Here's what I would love to see. I would love to see the Pope celebrate a traditional Latin Mass, a pontifical high Mass in St. Peter's Basilica on a high feast day like Easter or Christmas, just once. All you'd have to do is one, and you would get so much. It would mean so much to so many people, and people that you would not traditionally think of as allies in other aspects of things that you think are important. Like, the Catholic Church actually does have something to say about how we take care of our environment. That is a legitimate teaching. And again, I go back to Rerum Novarum, and go check out Rerum Novarum and what it says about the universal destination of goods. And people who you think would not normally be your ally on that could be. You know what I mean? I think if you but it's got to be centered in the Gospels. It's got to be centered in an authentic Christian teaching. Otherwise, all these other people who have come and gone, Karl Marx and all these other folks who've come and gone with all these great plans about how to build a civilization. They come, their civilizations are disasters, and then they die out in history. But Christ endures, and his message endures. And I still think that's a message worth teaching. So yeah, maybe that might be. What about you, Jace? What do you think?
Oh, I don't know. It's just a question for you. I didn't even think about
me.
What? It's just a question. I do. I did want to ask you this as well, and I don't know if it's true or not. And I don't know how much you know about Pope Leo the 13th. But I was reading something the other day, and like I said, I don't know if it's true, but they had claimed that Leo the 13th back in his day, in the late 1800s, there was considered a liberal, more of a liberal pope, when he was elected versus, and that's why they went to Pius X afterwards, because he was conservative. So they were kind of going back and forth. I don't know if that's true. I was just kind of curious if you ever heard anything like that, because
I can see how people might think that. I don't know, but I know that Rerum Novarum advocates for some things that are typically associated with left-wing politics, like labor unions. It says that labor unions are a good thing. And it, talks about how working people have dignity and should be allowed to live with dignity and have basic, amenities to access to healthcare and things like that. So, go read Rerum Novarum. I'm not an expert in it, but you should check it out. I think we're all going to hear a lot about it in the next.
Well, we did a show on it.
It was that was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. He drank cocaine while he was Leo the 13th, man. The powder was pure. It was pure.
Do you I mean, and then like I'm just thinking with all the economic issues around the world today, and then you factor in all the migration, the immigration from the migrants from different parts of the world that are moving all over. Sometimes it kind of, it makes me think, do you think we need another type of Rerum Novarum that speaks to these things, speaking to the dignity of how to how to for nations not only to protect their borders, but to also, it's kind of like the worker. He talks in Rerum Novarum. He talks about how to treat the workers with dignity and allow them to prosper and how live a peaceable life. Sometimes with all the controversy and the wars around the world right now and everything going on, it almost seems like we need somebody to speak to that at a deeper level.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think I think a new version of Rerum Novarum, and the popes even said Rerum Novarum came about as a consequence of the Industrial Revolution. And he said, we're in the midst now of a new type of industrial revolution, a digital industrial revolution where AI and other
See, I haven't heard that. I didn't hear him say that.
Oh yeah. He made this whole outline where he said, this digital revolution, there are good things about it. And then there are things which are very threatening and concerning to human dignity. And so I think we're going to see another Rerum Novarum type document specifically tailored to that issue. And I think that he's not wrong about that. I think these tech oligarchs are, the more frightening thing about them is not that they're super liberal, they're super progressive or whatever, because I noticed as soon as it looked like Trump was going to win the presidency, man, Mark Zuckerberg was conservative all of a sudden, and now Elon Musk is conservative. And I just thought to myself, hey, what if none of these guys really believe in anything? And how much more terrifying is that?
Yeah. I mean, the problem is they don't. It's just what benefits them at the time, and I think that's just the history, history of the world, really.
Yeah,
of the elites in the world.
And with this AI thing, there's some very scary things. Some very scary questions being asked right now with all this AI stuff that's going on. I mean, so I think,
and the question I asked you earlier, I do think something that really needs to be spoken about pretty heavily is also invasion of the West. I mean, you can't deny that Western Europe, the West, are being invaded by groups of people who do not share Christian values or the values of the West, which the values of the West are historically Christian values, right?
Right.
I just don't feel like, of course, our political leaders, and I don't feel like the church is really speaking out. How does the church go about protecting the West and its values from these invaders that are coming from, different countries? Because again, something has to be said, something has to be done that actually doesn't just invite them into the West with open arms, saying, well, you've got to treat the migrant, let him do whatever he wants type philosophy. There has to be a hard line that says, okay, this is what's allowable. Past that, no, you have a right to defend your borders, you have a right to defend your values, your families, and whatnot. But do you get what I'm saying? Because it feels like for the past 10 years or whatever, we were supposed to just accept as Catholics. Well, they're fleeing a war-torn country, so we just got to accept them, no questions asked. And I don't think that I have a hard time thinking that is a Christian value.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think that what used to irritate me is Francis would talk about this issue like it was just the simplest thing in the world, just accept refugees. Like, how hard is it? And it's like, okay, well, that puts this tremendous material strain on other countries. But more to the point, what I think Rerum Novarum and I'm glad, who was it, Lori, it was Men who brought up Quadragesima Anno. What I think they would speak to something like this is, okay, yeah, taking in refugees and caring for refugees and the displaced is important, but we also need to look at what it is they're running away from and why that's happening. Because to tolerate, listen, the United States has a failed narco state at its southern border, and everybody just seems to be fine with that. There's just, what are you going to do? Failed narco state at your southern border. Now, what we really need to do is figure out how we're going to take in the millions of human refugees. And it's like, we're not even going to discuss not making them refugees in the first place. No, that's not even a discussion. We're not going to have that. Well, that seems kind of crazy to me.
Well, what's crazy to me too is the fact that it does feel like I said a minute ago. It has felt like for at least the past decade that we are supposed to care and tend to the migrants at the expense of our own families and our own countrymen, and it's just like that's not right. That's
And
there has
also
to and oh sorry, and this I was just
No,
gonna
it's
say
okay.
it just seems like. I'd say, but it just seemed like Pope Francis and our other leading bishops were just afraid to take a hard line stance, saying, "Okay, here it is." It was just well, we can't say anything harsh. We just got to accept everybody, And it's just like, dude, we need a hard line, Here's a line in the sand
Yeah,
from our leaders, and we don't have that. We don't have that.
The Catholic the problem with the Catholic bishops is 9 times out of 10 they don't even know what the real problem is. You know why they like we were talking about that papal tiara thing earlier, and the real reason they got rid of the tiara thing is they thought it looked bad. They thought it looked bad, and they thought it looked too ostentatious, and like they had too much money, and everybody's going to get mad at them if they have money. And so let's literally do the thing Judas said. Let's sell the oil and give the money to the poor, kind of a thing, right? But what they never understood is the real problem in the world is people are not sure what role, if any, religion plays in their lives anymore. And if once you realize that that's the problem, you start realizing that taking the crown off of your head is a really stupid idea at that moment, because delegitimizing your own authority within the world is not going to help a bunch of people who are currently concerned that you don't have any real place in the world feel differently. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they can never really figure out what the real problem is. But anyway, I don't know how I got off on that tangent. But
well, it's not really a tangent. It's what we're talking about.
I know, but I never know how to end them.
Well, that's my problem, especially with this episode, is not how to end, not only how to end some of the statements I'm saying, but I'm also trying to have proper decorum and respect for, Pope Francis and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just a layman. So
yeah, I mean, we don't have, never listen to anything we say on this show and take it as actual any spiritual advice in any capacity, because we're kind of idiots. So we don't.
It's kind of funny. I watched. Did you watch that show Conclave? That movie?
I have not watched it. I just kind of. It looks like a snooze. It looks like such a snooze. Is it a snooze?
I wouldn't watch it again, but it was fine, worth it for the first time. I mean, for like a one-time watch. It's not. I mean, obviously the ending was kind of retarded, but
yeah.
But there was one of the Italian conservative cardinals that was one of the favorites possibly to win in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And after the bombing in Italy, in Rome, there they had a meeting, and he had this big speech, and he was talking about the invasion of the West and basically and whatnot. And of course he lost. At that point, nobody voted for him again. But I remember thinking, oh, that's a pretty good speech. He's right. Well, I'm on the internet looking, and like on Wikipedia villains or whatever, it's like villain Wikipedia. He was considered a villain in the show, and I'm like, what? He's considered a villain, but
you thought he was the hero of the show.
But the other guy who was one of the other favorites, who literally during the show says he supports contraception, he supports women priests, gay marriages, and all that. He was fine. He was one of the heroes of the show. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I had a discussion with a young man about women priests, and he wanted to know, why some cardinals are for it and against it, and what this, that, and the other thing. And I was sort of basically the way I told him is that whether you're for it or against it, to me, almost sort of doesn't really matter, because the church's understanding of itself is that it just doesn't have the authority to change the 7 sacraments. So the sacramental matter form, the matter and the form of the sacraments, we receive them from Christ, and we just don't really have the authority to do that. And as much as you may think it's a good or a bad idea, these aren't really political institutions. These are sacred institutions instituted by Jesus Christ. He owes us no explanations, and he doesn't owe us any, he doesn't account to us for these things. So it's not like we can write Jesus a petition and go, look, I've got 700 signatures and they say this, and it's just not the way sacraments work.
How about when they had that petition going online to, what was it? It was like to get Cardinal Sarah elected.
Yeah, I get Cardinal elected.
Was it? Yeah,
so if somebody, okay, DeCrevy determined to be Catholic, who I love his show, and I'd really love to talk to him sometime because I know he was in the Legion and I was in the Legion and we were there about the same time. But he had this petition for the Cardinals to elect Robert Cardinal Sarah, and I thought, yeah, that's not something we should be participating in. The Catholic Church is not a democracy, and it shouldn't. And thank God for that, right? Just not something. And the people who were betting on it, oh man, that's bad. Don't do that. I mean, it's too late now. If you already were, you go to confession immediately and say you didn't know any better. But that's excommunicable for something like that. So, yeah, a lot of table turning that should have been done. And
they were saying they were saying that was no longer excommunicable. That it was what's the word? Overturned, maybe. Like in the early 19th,
I mean, I'll be honest. I'm not a canon.
I mean, it's still, but I still think it's frowned upon. I don't think it's something you should be doing, even if it's not. Like, it's just, I don't know. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable doing
it's in bad form. It's in bad form. You know, this isn't a boxing match.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm excited. I can't wait to see. I actually think I would look forward to some really beautiful liturgical theology from this Pope. So
I want you to say this again. I had you tell it in our group chat. I thought it was interesting. Maybe I'm simple-minded, but I thought it was interesting how you framed Pope Leo XIV picking his name, and you contrasted it from Paul VI to now in light of Vatican II. And the changes.
I look at Pope names are very interesting to me, and of course, you know, the history of the names and all that stuff. So, the Second Vatican Council was convened under Pope John the 23rd, and it's concluded under Paul VI. The very next Pope we get names himself John Paul, an obvious tip of the hat to the Council. The very next Pope after him again names himself John Paul. So we're still very much in the vein of the Council is probably the most significant religious event of the 20th century, and we're very much about that. John Paul II dies, and the very next Pope we get breaks from this tradition and names himself Benedict. He goes more old school with the name. He begins to dial back a lot of some of the reforms that took place after the Council. He re-legitimizes and rehabilitates the authentic Roman rite in Summorum Pontificum. He dies, and then the person after him goes way off the reservation with the naming. He just sort of picked his favorite saint, Francis, you know, like a 14-year-old kid getting ready for confirmation. It's like, I like Saint Francis. Okay, great. So he picks Francis, and then the Pope right after him goes way old school again, Leo the 14th. So I'm interested to see if this represents, I don't want to say a break with Vatican II. I don't think a denunciation of Vatican II, but I think just a moving on from it. You know what I mean? That council is so dated, and its lessons to us at this point are limited. Not to say they're insignificant, but again, I go back to the Catholic Church's document on social communication. There's nothing in there about social media. There's nothing in there about the internet. It's limited. All councils are, right? If I wanted to go see what the Council of Trent is going to tell me about AI, well, it's going to be a short read because the Council of Trent didn't say anything about AI because it didn't have anything to say about it. It didn't exist back then. There's limitations to every ecumenical council. So I just hope that it's time to move on to some other more pressing issues. So we'll see, you know, but that's my theory on the naming stuff. We'll see.
Yeah, well, there's and I know some of these ecumenical councils, they combated the Arian crisis, then you got
Yeah.
Ephesus and give us Theotokos and all that, but yeah, Vatican II didn't really cover any. Did it cover? I'm trying to think. Did it cover any significant?
Excuse me, I've got sinuses going on here that are just crazy.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. It didn't really cover any significant theological disputes.
None.
Right.
None.
Yeah.
It has no. There's. It's just about the church itself, and there are no definitive dogmas proclaimed in Vatican II, and that's why everybody says, "Well, you have to say that you." Do you deny Vatican II? Deny what? That it happened? No, I don't deny that it happened. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I believe the Second Vatican Council was a real thing that happened. Well, do you believe everything that's in there? I don't. Do you? Because one of the things that's in there says that Latin is the principal language of the Roman Rite and is to be preserved as a place of honor. They just completely scrapped that. But I got to go around all day talking about how much I adhere to Vatican II, and they don't have to do that. I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
Make them sign a few permission slips to go to their mass, because I got a document that says I got a right to my liturgy henceforth, now, forever, and in perpetuity. Make them sign some permission slips. Okay. Folks, this is why you tune in. This is what you tune in for.
Permission slips. Oh.
Well, they got to sign. I mean, seriously, you go to traditional Latin mass. These monitors want you to sign all these loyalty oaths and these permission slips and give us a drop of your blood. And it's like
I thought I gave
happen.
I thought I gave you my loyalty when you asked me, do I renounce Satan and all his works?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's the thing about traditional custodes that used to just defy me was we have to worship at the Novus Ordo Missae because the Novus Ordo Missae is the principal sign of unity. And I was like, what is the Catholic Church then? I thought, so these Byzantines were not in the same church with them because they don't celebrate the Novus Ordo Missae. Like, it didn't, the liturgical theology in that document was so simple. There's only two explanations. He either knows none of that's true and he's lying about it, or he's so grossly incompetent he's not even minimally qualified for that job that he had. So which one do you think is worse? Because people say, you can't call the Pope a liar. And I'm like, I only said it because he lied. You don't want people to call you liars. The quickest way to do that is to stop telling them lies. It's okay for him to lie to people, but I can't notice it's happening. Give me a break. Come on. And that's our show, folks. Let's see here. Yeah, that's the dumbest thing. Why do we have to sign an oath to attend? Great question. I never could figure out why they're so afraid of that. It's puzzling because that mass is irrelevant and nobody likes it, but also it's incredibly dangerous and you got to be really careful with it because, like, what do you think is going to happen? If I go to this thing, I'm going to walk out a neo-Nazi or something. I mean, some of their theories about,
technically, not technically, that was one of their claims. Remember, after all that happened, they talked about white supremacy in the Latin mass, and I'm sitting here at Regina Celli looking around, being like, I really think I might be in the minority here.
Yeah.
Like literally might be in the minority here right now.
Lie number two. That's the thing, is there were three things in that document that were just blatant lies, and they were such bad lies that it was an insult on top of the lie, because it was like, I'm just going to insult your intelligence. I'm going to do a lie that's so bad that I'm basically letting you know I don't even care if people believe me or not. I have so much power. I'm the Pope and you're not. And I just thought it was a really sick way to look at the papacy, but he's gone, and now we got a new Pope. So we know no reason to. The timing always made me question when Mass Day just came out. Then the Vatican doubled down. I always wondered if the Vatican heard about it. I know for a fact they watched that film. Somebody did and reported back to him.
Well, the timing was even more worse, considered you were just coming out of COVID shutdowns.
Yeah, the COVID thing, and there was just a bunch of different things. Like I I was having trouble passing the Texas State bar. That was tough for me to do. And then I finally get done with that, and then COVID hits, and then everything's getting shut down, and then there's all this racial tension, and there's riots every night. And oh, by the way, we're taking away the mask for good now because we're cracking down. And once Traditionis Custodes happened, that was the thing that broke me. I was like, that's too many straws. There it is. That's the thing. I can't deal with that. And it's just been really, really hard for me to maintain the faith after that, because I always felt like you go to mass, you feel like you're doing something wrong. And to get, I never understood how to be a good, obedient servant of the church, because the church would publish this book called the Catechism with all this stuff in it. And it was okay for them to publish the book. But for some reason, if I read it and believed the things that were in there, that made me a bad person from the same people who published it. So they'd write it down, and that was okay. They sent it to me, and that was okay. Told me I had to believe everything that was in it, and that was okay. And then I did.
You had to buy it first. You had to buy it first.
I think I had to buy it first. Yeah.
No. I'm just saying you had to buy it. Yeah. Well,
but that was always very strange to me, how they could publish something and then tell you were a bad person for reading it. I just, that was very, very strange for me. I never understood that, but
well,
I guess
Tyler
that's
says,
just,
well, he says here, it was probably more because of COVID. The TLM exploded and they started sweating. I do know during that time, because I would work the doors at the high mass at 10 o'clock or 10:30, whatever time it was during then. And I can't tell you how many people we would get that were new saying, hey, I can't go to my parish here or whatnot, or they were their masses had limitations on amounts of people, or it was just like you had to wear a mask, So I remember talking to so many people that were coming through the door. Now we were supposed to have limitations on how many people could attend the mass because of the COVID rules and whatnot. And, we're basically as door people, and I think you did a 5:30 mass. We were supposed to be checking off people. Okay, well, you're on the list, buddy. You can go in. Well, sorry, buddy, you're not on the list. You're out of here. I honestly, I don't know if maybe I was wrong but I didn't feel it within my right to tell somebody, nope, you can't go. I never turned. They would come up, they'd be like, oh, I didn't know we're supposed to sign up. I was like, oh, it'll be fine this time. Just go ahead and go in. Like, I'm like, who am I to tell you, no, you can't go to mass? I
had a discussion with a priest.
But so many people came to our parish because of that.
I'm not going to tell you the name of him, but he's an FSSP priest, and he understood what I was saying, but he said, wholly obedient. The bishop has asked us of this. We have to be obedient to the bishop. Right. And I was like, good, let the bishop come down here and do it. You're asking me to stand here and gatekeep. I'm not going to do that. Yeah. And if that's fine, that's fine. Get the cardinal down here and tell him he can stand here and kick people out of the church. I'm not doing it. And then after that, it wasn't a discussion anymore. I answered a bigger, this may shock people, some of the people who work in the Vatican, but we answer to bigger people even than them. Is it possible? Oh my goodness.
That's how, literally that's how I felt. Like I know the bishop and whatnot, or do our obedience, but at the end of the day, it was like one of those things like, man, do I, serve God versus man type deal. It was like, I can't in good conscience turn people away from mass. I just can't do it. And I'm like you, if they want me to do that, then I'm not going to be able to do it. They'll just have to ask somebody else to do it.
I have to ask somebody else 100%. Yeah.
And I was open about it when if I was asked about it, I mean, I was open about it. I was like, no, I'm not really like checking people off a list,
I felt like a lot of people, I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I felt like during COVID, our institutions turned on us, and including the Catholic Church. And that was the one that I least expected to. And that really hurt my feelings. And it put me in this weird space, man, where I was, because every time you'd hear Francis is releasing a new document, your immediate reaction was fear. And I thought, well, because it's like, which of two impossible choices will I be forced to make this time? with this document. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I get the feeling that they just enjoy watching us, like that villain in the Old West movies that just shoots at your feet and watches you dance for their amusement.
Right.
I got the feeling that that's what this was. I don't feel like that anymore, because I feel like the Cardinals went in there and selected a real bishop for us, and that must mean that at some level they do care about us. So that makes me feel a lot better. But
yeah, and it does seem like, for the most part, though, I know in the beginning of the show we talked about some of the negative aspects of the way people are acting, but it does also seem like on both sides there's a lot of people that are happy with it too. You know,
yeah, and I think
on all
maybe
sides
we're
of
all
the,
tired of the church being a culture war. Maybe we're all tired of it. I know I sure am. I would just like to get back to doing Catholic Church things like saving souls and stuff like that.
And here's the thing. I mean, we're in the first few days of a new pontificate. Why not look at it with hope? You know, and
why not?
Like I said, yeah, why not? I mean, it's a
and there's
fresh
going to be
start right
things
now.
about this guy you're not going to like. He's a sinner. He's a human being, and he is not you. So he's going to have ideas and thoughts and opinions about things that are.
You don't even like yourself all the time.
Right.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah, 100%.
You don't even like your spouse like things they do all the time. I mean, that's
yeah. So I mean, I think I wouldn't go looking for things. People who have, I've scoured the internet, and in 1987 at his fifth grade English class, he wrote this thing, and I just think that's incredibly troubling for a pontiff to write something. Okay, first off, he was in the fifth grade when he wrote that. Second of all, what are you doing? Like you're just going around, like a pig rooting for truffles, trying to find evidence of heresy so you can. Don't do things like that. I
think it's kind of funny where people are like on Twitter or on X, where everybody's, well, he reposted this, or so and so likes him. I'm like, oh, okay, he reposted something we don't agree with. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, let's see what he does, and let's see when the rubber meets the road. Let's see what actually happens.
Yeah, and I'm like, and there's even people like the sources of some of this stuff. Well, I heard from my best friend's sister's brother's boyfriend's girlfriend, who knows the guy, who knows the girl, who used to date the kid, who heard that one time he used a Ouija board in the Vatican. So that's your Pope. Okay, think about that. It's like, what are you talking about? I mean, I hear all these things, and you're just like, what are you even talking about? Oh goodness. Yeah, no, I say stay positive.
See,
keep your heads up. I think, what had happened was oh, Jason. All right. I got to get ready to go to work tomorrow. Guys, that's a show. I'm so excited. God bless you. God bless His Holiness, Pope Leo the 14th. Peace, long life, prosperity to his reign. Take good care of yourselves. Take good care of each other. Jason, any thoughts? Anything new on the horizon for you?
No, nothing new. I just found
taking up space is basically how you live now.
That's exactly how this is. I'm sorry. What if I didn't have any arms or legs? That's basically how you exist now, Kevin.
Right now, Kevin.
I would want to live without arms. I would want to live without legs.
It's one of the funniest episodes. Guys, we will go off onto Office tangents. If you haven't watched The Office, then stop watching this and go watch the whole show and then come back.
I just found out that my oldest son, he just turned 11. I don't really talk about these things at home, but I think it's hilarious that I heard him and his younger brother, who's 8, they were arguing, or they weren't really arguing, but they were debating the moon landings and if dinosaurs were real. And my oldest son is skeptical of it all. It's freaking hilarious. Like they were in the back seat the other day. We were driving, and I heard him. I was just listening to them talk, and my younger son, my 8-year-old, he's like, "Yeah, dinosaurs exist. You know this, that." And my older son's like, "No, they didn't." And he's like, my younger son's like, "What about all the bones? They have all the bones." And like he just checkmated him, right? And my older son goes, "Yeah, they could just make all that up." And then the 8-year-old, he asked me, he goes, "Dad, is that true?" I go, "Well, I mean, technically, yeah, it is true. They could just make it all up." He's like, "Dinosaurs are real." And my other son's like, I don't think so. And then like we're sitting at the dinner table one day, And I don't know what brought it up, but he's just kind of sitting down looking at his food and he's eating it, and we're just kind of talking. And I say, just joking around, I think trying to aggravate or tease one of my older daughters, I said, yeah, we didn't even land on the moon or something like that. And my son looks up, he stops the video, he looks up, he goes, that's what I'm talking about. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, I think that was, he goes, I don't think it's real. I think they were just in a studio. And I was like, all right.
I can see him doing that too.
It was the funniest thing, dude.
I can't wait to hear what your kids think about, SSPX and Econ and all that stuff when they get old enough to read that history. They'll get into that. No, I stay tuned. We're going to be doing a show on. So real quick, my idea here is to go through the creed, sort of article by article. I want to talk a little bit about what the church fathers have said and how the church has and understood some of the things that are in the creed, a little bit of the history of the Council of Nicaea. So look out for that. That's going to be a series that's going to start pretty soon. And I hope that you guys will come along and join us for that. That's really all I have for right now, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. This was a fun episode. I hope everybody has a great week tomorrow. God bless you. And we'll see y'all later. Jason, have a good night.
God bless.